Hey folks, what's happening? Gonna wrap up chapter 4 here. Uh, One of the things that we haven't talked about in the chapter is the critique that feminism brings to Freud and theorists that come after Freud, and really uh, a critique to challenge this idea that males are somehow inherently superior. Um, we see this critique really take shape in a critique against traditional science as well, and so it's not surprising that feminism has some of their own interpretations of how gender is manifest and um, what the roles that socialization play in that. But in order to understand the critiques, we really need to spend a couple of minutes talking about what feminism actually is. The term feminism originated in France in the late 19th century. Femme meaning woman, and ism meaning or a reference to social movements. It was looking at many of the social justice movements that were taking shape in France at that time, and women's roles in those social movements. The term surfaced again in the early 20th century in the U.S. suffrage movement. Now, many of the suffragists did not see themselves as feminists, even though they were pushing forward ideas that ultimately are primary to what feminism becomes in the 1960s. And it was in the 1960s where feminism really becomes a worldwide movement. And this worldwide movement is designed to challenge gender inequality in law and culture around the world. So that begs to define, or that begs us to define what feminism actually is. And I'm going to make reference to Friedman's interpretation, her definition of what feminism is. Uh, when I make reference to Friedman, and this would be throughout the course, I'm talking about Estelle Friedman's lectures that you'll find in some, not all of the section folders, but you will hear from Estelle Friedman over the course of the semester. So she defines feminism as a belief that although women and men are inherently of equal worth, most societies privilege men as a group. As a result, social movements are necessary to achieve political equality between women and men, with the understanding that gender always intersects with other social hierarchies. So, uh, Estelle Friedman is establishing the inherent equality in worth between women and men, and understanding or focusing us on how power and socialization norms and values play into the differences between men and women and where those differences ultimately come from. When we think about feminism, it's helpful to talk about what it is not as well as what it is. So this is just kind of debunking myths. It's not a theory of women's victimization by men, as many of the contrarians to feminism would have us believe. It's not for women only. Feminism is it's a worldwide movement to talk about gender equality, as well as racial, ethnic, religious inequalities. along with it. It is not solely a Western phenomenon, as some would have us believe, that, oh, it only happens in Western cultures. You don't see feminism taking shape in those cultures that we would consider Eastern, if you will. For example, Muslim cultures. But that's just not true. It might take on a different form, but feminism is still prevalent in those societies as well. And last but not least, but sometimes maybe as important, it's never monolithic or static. There are varieties of feminist ideas that keep shaping and reshaping over time. As I mentioned earlier, feminism exists in Western and Eastern cultures. It just might be a little bit different how it's portrayed and how it's carried out in each of those cultures. Some other feminist challenges, especially in reference to a critique of Freud, this penis envy means that women will always see themselves as inferior to men. So they're not buying this penis envy. They're willing to critique it and talk about it in different light. Karen Horney talks about the castration complex, where it's not penis envy, it's privilege envy. Since males are seen as superior and then treated with privilege, it's not that females are envious of the absence of a penis, it's that they're envious of the absence of privilege. And she also brings us to realize and pay more attention to the subordination of women that provides the ultimate context for women's development. So if we don't start thinking about the fact that women are treated differently in our societies and they're socialized different, then we might not be able to move past some of these historical interpretations of the differences between men and women. And some argue that Freud had it backward. It's not penis envy, it's womb envy. And it raises the question of what if subordination of women stemmed from men's fear of women's reproductive power? Many feminist scholars have turned the question around, ultimately to ask, how is it that men come to see themselves as superior to women? Not that they are superior to women, but how is it that they start to construct a reality that places them in a hierarchy where they have more rights, they have more privileges than women, and then justifies that? Where does that come from? Chodorow continues to critique Freud and essentially claims that Freud inadvertently revealed the source of male domination by looking at the key stages before Oedipal crisis. The boys lose capacity for intimacy and connection with their mother. Masculinity ultimately is about denying all things that are feminine, and Freud ultimately becomes a feminist reading of male domination. Essentially, it's kind of like Marx turning Hegel on its head. Feminism here is turning Freud on his head. Gillikin reminds us of some of the questions that we could bring to Kohlberg's theories. The idea that stages of cognitive and moral development appear only when men's lives are considered the norm. So once again, digging below the surface to understand what's going on with gender construction, gender identity, the importance of socialization in the development of gender forms, and the importance of science and kind of codifying what behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs and actions could be attributed to one gender over another.